Okay, so now we've moved on to where we want 2 washers added on here. So I'm just gonna add another washer and see what happens to this. And again, this is me just using my scientific method to test out experiments that I can do in the comfort of my own home. And we are making flinkers, right? So I'm gonna make sure that this is nice and compact here. Oh, sunk way to the bottom. It's no longer floating. So now I know that I need to take off that washer and try out maybe something else. Maybe adding more paper clips because that washer was way too heavy. So I'm gonna stick my hand all the way down in here and spill it out a little bit, a lot. Okay, I'm gonna take off my washer. Did not work this time. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is decide that I'm changing my experiment up because the washer is a lot more heavier than the paper clip. It's a lot more dense. So what I'm gonna do is test out multiple more versions until I can finally get my flinker to flink, okay? And stay tuned. Okay, and we're back. So this time I added a Coke bottle cap to my paper clip, cork, and washer, and let's see what happens to this one. So it looks like it's sunk, but it's still, the cork looks like it's flinking, but it's really not, because this little guy is actually touching the bottom. So he's not really exactly flinking yet. So we still need something that pulls it up a little bit more. Now, at this point in my experiment, I'm on my 3rd hypothesis, okay? I'm gonna wipe my hands off really quickly. I'm on my 3rd set of hypothesis, and the way that we've done it, so this is my 1st hypothesis. I experimented, it didn't work. So I'm going back to make a 2nd hypothesis, which just happens to be here. That didn't work, right? So my 3rd hypothesis was 1 washer, 1 paper clip, 1 Coke bottle cap, and a cork. And it still didn't, well, and I said that it would flink. It still didn't work, right? So now we're going back up again to continue to retry each of our hypotheses. At this point in my experiment, I'm getting pretty close, right? And I just want to show you a couple of other options that you can do. When you're looking at your scientific method, in your paperwork, it says experiment, so I'm showing you experiment, materials. Well, you can list all the materials that you're using, and I've listed them here. Procedures. Well, I added my paper clips and then I tried to see if it would work. So you can just add in your materials. So when I'm looking at my constraints and variables, constraints are something that never changes in my experiment. So what has never changed in my experiment? I'm gonna pretend like you're answering me right now. It's the water, yeah? Water has a constant density of 1, always, unless you add something to it, which we're getting ready to experiment with. So your constant, or your constraint, is the density of water, right? Everything else is basically changing, and those are your variables, the number of paper clips, the materials that you're using, right? You're just trying to create a flinker. And then after you get done with your flinker lab, you'll write an analysis and your conclusion, okay? So really quickly, I want to show you a game changer that we can use, and I'm hoping this works because I haven't tried it. I know it works with eggs, and you've seen, you can Google all kinds of YouTube density videos, and how sometimes adding stuff to water changes the mass of the water, and it will make more dense things less dense. So I'm looking at it right now, and I'm going to start stirring. If I can go and find a stir stick, I'll be right back. Got my handy dandy stir stick, which is actually a ruler. So I'm gonna make sure that I'm letting my salt dissolve in my water, which is it's a property of matter. Solubility is the ability for substances to dissolve in other substances. So it becomes hard to see, it gets rather cloudy, okay? But know that as I add weight to this water, it's dissolving, but I'm not changing the amount of space it's taking up. So I'm changing the mass of the water, which then increases its density. Now this might It might be better to experiment this on eggs because you can actually see the eggs to start to rise. But we have a washer here that's pretty dense. So what we might have to do, and it's getting to the point where you can't even see through my water. So I want you to see if you can't try this at home with eggs or with something that will change the density. I'm gonna come back to this, and I'm actually going to look at I've changed the substance. I've changed the substance in here to be salt water now. So it's obviously changed the density. But so I have this little plastic guy that was almost going to sink in the regular water, but let's see what it does here. So, I don't know, you can't hardly see. It's actually floating at the top of my water now. So let me just go closer to you. If you can kind of see, it's floating at the top of the water instead of swimming vertically. So see if you can't play around with this at home. And hopefully that helps you create your own density experiment at home.